Welcome back to AfroComedyVibes, and today we are looking at the comedy vibes between the Nigerian government and the Nigerian children who are crying for hunger. In Nigeria, several minors were arrested in August 2024 during the #EndHunger protests, where citizens gathered to express frustration over increasing hunger and economic hardship. Many of the arrested children, reportedly between 14 and 17 years old, faced significant obstacles after a judge set their bail at 10 million naira per child, a condition nearly impossible for many families in poverty to meet. The strict bail requirements included two sureties, one being a senior-level civil servant, which has drawn criticism for being unfeasible for families already struggling with Nigeria's rising cost of living. In the recent legal case that has drawn intense public interest and controversy in Nigeria, the group of minors arrested during the August #EndHunger protest that has been granted bail by an Abuja court at an exceptionally high amount of 10 million naira per child as stated before. This decision, criticized as excessively harsh, has put these impoverished young protesters and their families in an impossible financial situation. The court's bail conditions also require each child to present two sureties, including a civil servant of a high rank, further complicating the chances of securing their release. These children, who ranged between 14 and 17 years old, were part of a mass protest highlighting the growing issue of hunger and economic hardship affecting Nigerians under current inflation and fuel price spikes. In response to public outcry and reports that several of the children were visibly malnourished and even collapsed in court, the Nigerian Attorney General, Prince Lateef Fagbemi, intervened by calling for an early court hearing and transferring the case file to his office. This move indicates that the government is reviewing the charges and handling of these young protesters, although official charges of treason still stand against some of the demonstrators involved. The response from Nigerian citizens has often been tinged with irony and exasperation, with many seeing the situation as emblematic of deeper systemic issues and likening it to a tragic comedy. Many Nigerians feel this approach underscores the lack of governmental accountability and the distance between officials and the realities faced by ordinary people. The high bail and stern charges against children, who are seen by some government representatives as adults posing as kids, have only deepened concerns around the use of state power to suppress dissent, particularly as basic living conditions have worsened across the country. During court proceedings, some of the children appeared malnourished and visibly weak, with reports indicating several had collapsed, prompting temporary withdrawal of charges due to their health conditions. In response, the Attorney General ordered an examination of the situation and urged a review of the hearing schedule, aiming to bring forward the trial date. This case has spurred a public outcry, with many Nigerians interpreting the government's handling of the children's detention and severe bail terms as detached from the public's realities, adding to an already tense environment. Critics have highlighted the situation as a comedy of errors, underscoring the struggles citizens face under current economic policies, which they say have led to extreme inflation and high fuel costs. The response from authorities and the judicial process continues to be under scrutiny by the public, with widespread calls for humane treatment and a reassessment of the charges against the minors. The federal government has stepped into the case of the #End Bad Governance protesters, who were arraigned earlier on Friday at a federal high court in Abuja. The protesters, arrested during the August 1 to 10 demonstration, were granted 10 million bail each, with two sureties in like sum by Justice Obiora Egwatu. However, during their arraignment, 4 of the protesters, including 2 minors, slumped and were rushed to the hospital. This led to criticism, considering the look of the children, who seemed to be underfed. Reacting, the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Prince Lateef Fagbemi, announced the government's intervention in a statement on Friday night. Fagbemi directed the transfer of the case file from the police to his office, citing the need to examine certain issues before making an informed decision. He also instructed the Director of Public Prosecution of the Federation to initiate the process of bringing the adjournment date forward. Akpobome's statement reads, Press release. End bad governance protest. AGF intervenes, seeks case file from police. It has just come to my notice that the police have arraigned those arrested in connection with the End Bad Governance violent protest in court for various offences, including treason. There are some issues my office will need to look into regarding the matter to enable me take an informed decision. I am aware that the court has remanded the defendants in detention centres and adjourned the case to January. It is not within my power to vary the order of the court, remanding the defendants in detention centres and adjourning the case to January. I have, however, directed the Nigeria police to transfer the case file to my office and hand over same to the Director of Public Prosecution of the Federation, DPPF, tomorrow, Saturday, the 2nd of November, 2024. I have further directed the DPPF to immediately put machinery in motion for consideration of the court to bring the adjournment date forward, an earlier date. Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Prince Lateef Fagbemi, Esan, November 1st, 2024. However, the comedic aspect of this situation in Nigeria lies primarily in the absurdity and disconnect between the government's actions and the public's expectations. The high bail amount set by the judge, $10 million per child, is seen as farcical, given the poverty and hunger that led to the protest in the first place. For many Nigerians, this sum is far out of reach, especially for impoverished families already struggling to afford basic necessities, let alone legal fees. Further adding to the irony is the government's claim that these arrested individuals might not be children, but adults posing as minors, despite visible signs of malnutrition and their young appearances. This defense by the government's lawyer appears to many as a misguided attempt to delegitimize the protest and avoid addressing the underlying issues of hunger and poverty. Many Nigerians have found it ironically humorous that the government would go to such lengths instead of tackling the actual problem of hunger. In essence, the comedy in this tragedy comes from the stark contrast between the gravity of the hunger issue and the bizarre legal responses, which citizens perceive as an almost theatrical attempt by officials to sidestep their responsibilities. This reaction has led many to criticize the authorities, viewing their response as both detached from reality and emblematic of deeper systemic issues, resulting in a public discourse that mixes both frustration and humor.